Welcome back to the Ivy Unleashed podcast. Today's episode could not be more timely, as you'll hear Andrea Sniffly McSniffles over here. We're talking about elderberry, specifically all things elderberry, and we have Emilia Rizzuto on the podcast. Emilia, welcome to Ivy Unleashed.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so good. We are in love with your products, all things elderberry. We've got the elixir. We've got the tea. If you're not watching on YouTube, tune in. You can see us real time here. So today we're going to dive into elderberry, but we want to take it back before elderberry came into your life. When you were 15, you got a Crohn's diagnosis. Take us back to that point in your life. What was life like then for you?
Well, that was a long time ago. I'm 45. So there's been a lot of in between. But at that point in my life, living in suburbia New York, and I was an athlete, I was a figure skater. And I just started getting really bad stomach issues. Like mine was more diarrhea, like just constantly having to go to the bathroom, definitely a lot of fatigue. And we just couldn't find any, like just didn't end. And so at that point, there was no internet. And so you couldn't just start Googling stuff and, diagnosing yourself. And so I started doing a million tests. And at that time, it wasn't also like as easy as it is now. Now you could do like a CT scan or whatever. Back then, there was all kinds of scopes and, not the most pleasant of tests for 15-year-olds. So I had like every scope you can imagine. And that's when they found Crohn's disease. And at that point, like, I had no idea what that was. I'd never heard of it. Nowadays, everybody knows somebody who's got Crohn's. It's like kind of like not really that big of a deal anymore. But back then, it was like devastating because they didn't have the kind of medications. Like they didn't really have a lot of answers. It was just like, well, this is for life. You just got to deal. So it was rough. I was in high school.
And for those who may have heard of Crohn's but aren't really familiar with exactly what it is, will you just tell us about exactly what it is?
Sure. So the kind of Crohn's that I have, it's inflammation of the small intestine. And what I have is called ileitis. So it's down by the ileum, which is the part that connects the large and small intestine together. It's kind of like where the B12 is taken up as well. So besides having symptoms like GI symptoms, it also causes, like in a lot of kids, you don't grow as well. So you're not getting the nutrition that you need. You're often dehydrated. You're just not growing. So there's a lot of other symptoms besides just the GI symptoms of having constant like stomach ache and diarrhea. Some people are nauseous. There's also, like, I was lucky I didn't have it, but other people can get sores. So it can go all the way from the esophagus to the anus. It's like the whole thing.
Wow. I'm thinking of you as a kid and how that must have made you feel so different or depleted or sad or mad. Like, what were your emotions like kind of getting that diagnosis and dealing with that in high school?
It was rough. It was a lot of anger mostly, I think. Just because like I was so active and I obviously like I had to quit figure skating at that point in my life. It was just very stressful because Crohn's also is affected by stress. So the higher your stress level is, the worse your symptoms can be. And also that sport is very impactful. So you're constantly falling and hurting yourself. It's just too much on the body, especially when you're so nutrient deprived. So I had to quit figure skating. I remember I was supposed to go to a dance, like it was like homecoming. I think it was like my sophomore year. And I had to call my date from the hospital.
No.
To say I wasn't able to go. Like it's like the next day because I was like on feeding tubes. And you don't want to tell people because you're like, sorry, I can't control my bowels. Like I don't want to, it's just like, it was a lot. And also like the testing was kind of like a lot. It was emotionally a lot. Yeah.
So it wasn't just you get this diagnosis, you're on medication, bam, you're better.
No,
what was the follow-up?
Yeah, because now they have biologics, which back then they didn't have. So like if you heard Remicade, Humira, those kinds of medications. They didn't have anything like that back then. So it was like, well, here's like, 120 milligrams of steroids, which is a lot. So they'd start you pretty high and then kind of try to taper you down. And then they'd give you immunosuppressant medications. There was like a million of them they tried. They tried combinations of different antibiotics. So you're just constantly on meds. And also as a teenager, you don't want to be on prednisone because then you have like the moon face and you break out and you're like, you rage in addition to already having hormones going crazy,
Wow. That's a lot. What was it like within your family unit?
It was hard on everybody, especially my mom. Because you're also just like, you're mad at them, you're mad at everybody, And my parents they're immigrants. They came in 79 from the Soviet Union. And they were just trying to kind of keep the lights on, you
Yeah.
know, like it was still survival mode in our house. So everybody was working. My mom was working. It was just everybody was in survival mode. And the interesting thing is, my dad actually was diagnosed with lupus right before that as well. So obviously there was some kind of connection. And I actually think mine was from Epstein-Barr virus. So I
Mm.
had like mono Epstein-Barr and then was diagnosed with Crohn's. So I think that was my trigger.
Okay.
So there must be something in our genetics, like because we're Ashkenazi, more prone to that. And, so it was like chaos in our house. It was
Yeah.
just like kind of like an S show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what really helped looking back that got you to where you are today? Obviously elderberry, spoiler alert, but outside of elderberry, I'm just thinking of you as a 15-year-old, your family, steroids, medications, like trying, I'm sure, all of the things, medication
Yeah.
and natural route as well. What really helped?
It actually took a long time, like a really long time, for anything to help. The first decade, I think, was just kind of trying different
Mm-hmm.
medications. Again, there was no internet, and we just didn't know. Like natural medicine was not that, it wasn't as common as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Like if your doctor told you this is what you need to do, you just did that. Like my doctor said, and I had the best, we were in New York, like my parents took me like the best doctors. I even had appointments with like top Crohn specialists. And it was just so disappointing because it was always like, it doesn't matter what you eat, it doesn't matter what you do. Like, this is just what it is, and take these medications. So that's what I did for like 10 years. I just did. And at that point, I became like a teenager and then in my 20s. And so I actually rebelled. I just went the opposite direction. I was like drinking, I was crazy. Um, which I'm sure did more damage. So it took me a long time to kind of come around. And then as I started getting older and, we got the internet, I was learning new things, I was meeting new people, I started focusing more on my health.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't really happen for me until I was like 30.
I mean, I'm
It
sure
was
anyone that has gone through it, for me, not to your extent of Crohn's, but you hear you have to be so regimented and strict, and the brain, it just freaks out and it wants to do the opposite. It's like you binge after so much of restriction. So I totally can relate. And I'm sure people out there that have had a diagnosis too, it's like, no, I don't want this to be my reality. I want to be quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
right. And that's what I
Yeah.
always used to say. Like, I just want to be normal. Like, I don't want to deal with this. And I was at that when I kind of had my first career, I was producing photo shoots. So I was traveling all over the country and it just wasn't a priority. Like I knew that I had like a pocket full of meds and I
Mm.
can control whatever symptoms I had. And I was on Remicade for I think 13 years, which is a biologic. So I would go into like cancer infusion centers every 4 weeks and sit there for like 5 hours and get infusions. And I did that for like 13 years, and that kind of worked. It was working at first, then like little by little, it would just get worse and worse. So I would have to increase my dosage. And then when I was 30, I was pregnant with my first, with my son, and I had another flare, even though I was already on Remicade anyway.
Mm.
And I ended up in the hospital, and they were just like, okay, well, we'll just give you like an extra dose of Remicade and we'll throw you on some steroids. And I was like, that's it? Like, and then what?
Yeah.
And then I started kind of freaking out because I'm like, oh my God, like this kid's not even out yet. Like, I'm already
Mm.
messing, like what now? And I asked about like, well, what are the studies? Like, does it, have you guys done a 10-year out study? How do we know? Like, and it was kind of like, they didn't really know. How
Mm.
does it affect the baby? You know, and
Mhm.
that's when I was like, oh God, I got to really kind of figure it out. And that's when I started really focusing on my health. I quit my job and went back to school for holistic nutrition.
Mm.
And I really started with nutrition first. Like I tried every diet possible. I like lived on bone broth. I, did the paleo autoimmune protocol and all the different things. And it helped a little bit, but not enough. And I also got myself into some trouble too, because I was like, I would read something and then I'd be like, okay, this is it. It's going to fix it.
Mhm.
And I would like stop taking my meds and go all in. And then like, obviously it was like a disaster. And my husband
Mhm.
was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just going to live on bone broth for 6 months and it's going to cure it. And it didn't.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, Because it wasn't just about that. Like it took me forever to figure that out. And then I started doing, okay, well, what's next? And then I started learning about tapping. And then you just start peeling this onion back and you're like, okay, well, obviously there's a lot of emotional issues I got to deal with. There's like shame and whatever else from all these years. So you have to just like start little by little going down the rabbit hole and doing all the things, like all of them. I feel like just the food is never enough, just the therapy is never enough. Like you have to do almost a complete overhaul.
But they all play a part, is what I'm hearing you say. It's yes,
Yeah.
nutrition's important, but it's not the only thing.
It's not because if your head's messed up, if you're thinking terrible thoughts, if you're an emotional disaster, if you're not sleeping, if you're constantly stressed out, there's no way. Like your body's in fight or flight constantly
Yeah.
and you can never heal.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
You
about
know?
flare-ups. Like with the flare-ups, would you see that it would be mostly food related or it'd be I'm an emotional wreck or I'm not sleeping? Like, does something specific cause flare-ups or is it kind of like a combination?
Good question.
I think for me, it was probably more stress. And then it was interesting because whenever I did have a flare up, I just wanted to eat all the wrong things. Like I grew up on cereal because, I don't know. There was that time when we all just ate cereal. Like
Yep.
I just grew up on Lucky Charms. And I would want to eat cereal. It was probably the worst thing you can possibly eat, but there's this weird thing in your body where just like you just want that like comfort food.
Comfort.
I think for me it was a lot of stress. Like I was traveling a lot. I had a really stressful job. And also like on the road, you're tired. I was drinking alcohol, I was smoking cigarettes. It's all of it. You're just a disaster.
The lifestyle wasn't matching what you needed to soothe the body, your intestines.
No, and I think
yeah.
it's because I just didn't want to accept it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is not it. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna do what I want to do anyway.
Yeah.
Is this a dumb question? Is Crohn's reversible? Like, is it something
They
that
say
you
it's
can
not.
cure?
They say it's not.
Okay.
Yeah. There are stories of people, very few that I've heard that have completely reversed it. I think you have to catch it really, really early and really, clean up everything up. So
Yeah.
I've only heard like two cases where it's been completely reversed that I've like tried to find. So no, they say it's like forever. It's chronic.
Okay. And it sounds like managing your stress has been a huge component for you. You mentioned tapping. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so it's you kind of just tap on your body in different places. Just like up here. So there's a technique, and that for me was really helpful. I was really into it for like 6 months. And I use it here and there now, but I mean, I was like really into it for like 6 months because it was really helping. I was able to clear out a lot of things. I think we just build so much in our bodies, and it needs to get out somehow. So I did around the same time. I did tapping and like rolfing.
Ralph.
So I must have like picked up some book that said like get everything out of your body.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I heard the episode that you guys did with the books that you love.
Yeah.
So I was also like obsessed with books. So every time I'd read a book, I'd be like, okay, I have to do all of these things now. So I have to get this like illness out of my body. And so I, would do tapping. I would do rolfing. Have you heard of rolfing?
No, please
It's like
share.
very, very extreme, like fascia breaking.
Oh.
It's very painful. Like they'll use like elbows and like, just break the fascia in your body, and then release all those emotions that are stuck in there.
Okay.
So I was doing things like that to try to get out like all stuck emotions in my body. And so that was one phase I went through. And then I remember my parents found like, which you probably have heard of. Have you guys heard of John of God?
No.
Oh, that was a whole thing. Oprah did a whole thing on that too. So there was this guy, John of God, that was in like Abidjan in Brazil. Like he was like a medical medium, they called him. Not the medical medium, sorry. He was like another medium. And so my parents were like, all right, we're going to Brazil. We're going to go there. We're going to all get cured. Like, okay, we're all going to Brazil.
Let's say less.
all went
I'm coming.
Brazil to like a little village and like lived there for like 4 weeks in this like place called the Casa and did all these like crazy crystal baths and waterfalls and I mean, yeah, meditation rooms for like hours and hours and hours and you try everything.
Right.
You're just like, where am I going next? What am I going to do next?
Did it work?
You know what? My husband will tell you that I was drugged. But I'm going to tell because he was like, I can't believe you're doing this. And
Because he didn't go with.
there was a lot of bad press that came like years later with this place, and it's currently shut down, and he's in jail.
Good.
But that's a whole thing. Look that up. But I can swear that because they did like invisible surgeries. I know this sounds wild.
I love it.
So like
You're
you
like
go into-
imagining them.
No, like you go into this room and then there's like a bunch of us in there, maybe like 30, 40 when I was there. And you would kind of put your hand like on the spot that you wanted a surgery on,
Okay.
and he would just like do surgery for everybody. But the crazy thing is, like, I know it sounds like this nuts, but then you would go back to your room, and like I swear to God, people were so sick. Like my
Mm.
dad, like almost died there. He had all these crazy hallucinations and visions, and he had pancreatitis right before that, and like the doctors told him like his pancreas would never heal.
Mm.
But he came back with like a healed pancreas. Like crazy stuff happened. And I swear I came back like I don't, I'm not saying cured at all, but I was a different person.
Mm.
Like there was a part of like my anger left.
Mm.
Like that part of what I was holding on, I was able to let go of there.
Yeah.
Um, so I did come back, I feel like in a much healthier state.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like if anything, those retreats, they change your beliefs and just shows how powerful the mind is. Like if you go in there with an open mind of this works and I'm
Yeah.
here for it and I'm releasing, and you just visualize it and like you get lost in the space. I've never done a retreat or anything remotely similar to that, but I can imagine that it's really just the power of the mind.
Yeah.
And how the mind can heal, and releasing that stress, what that does to your insides.
Yeah, and I believe in the power of belief. Like that's kind of like now in my life. It's actually funny that you said that because I feel like now in my life, I'm more on that side. Like I don't, of course it's the food, of course it's all the things, but I think beyond anything, it's all about what you just decide for yourself. Like your brain can pretty much convince yourself of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
You know?
powerful. Yeah. And I'm curious now because, as you're talking about stress and release, you're also a parent and an entrepreneur, which is like doing those two things at the same time is a lot of, I would say, quote, stress, depending on what your mindset is like, depending on what your support is like, and a lot of factors. So I'm curious, I know you went back to school, you got all this information, how you decide I'm going to throw myself into starting a business and how that was all created.
It was honestly a total accident. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do after I got out of school. I started doing some like coaching, like nutritional coaching, specifically for people with autoimmune. And then some of the clients that I had were like, "Oh, can you just make me bone broth? Can you just make me this? Can you just make me that?" Like they didn't want to do it. So then I started kind of like cooking a little bit. And but I was still like struggling with my own immune system. And that's really how I discovered the elderberry. It's like I was looking for immune support. It wasn't specifically for Crohn's because of the medication that I was on. I was still on Remicade. I was constantly sick. Like I had weird skin infections, like folliculitis issues. Like and my doctor was like, "You have to go get the flu shot." I got the flu shot, and then I got the flu really bad right after that, and like literally almost died. And so I was like, okay, I got to find something for immune support. And so I found elderberries, started just making some syrup for myself and then my kids. And then I just gave it out to some of the bus stop moms. And one of the moms was like, "Oh, you should sell this on like Facebook. There's like a mommy group or whatever." And I think somebody was asking for elderberry syrup. And I was like, "Okay." So I made a post in the Facebook group, and I had like 300 people like say like, "I'm interested." And I was like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "I don't even have a pot to make this in. I got like a little pot on my stove." And so it just started it was like a total accident, like never imagined it. And so I just started making this elderberry syrup and like doing meetups on a Saturday. And little by little, that was like in 2017. And then by 2019, I already had like a lot of customers. And I kind of started going around to like some health food stores and I was like, "Would you guys carry this? Like, what do I do?" So it was kind of like an evolution. Like I didn't really realize I was throwing myself into what this is now. I had no clue. You're just kind of like oblivious.
Yeah.
Just like, "Oh, I was just always like, I just kept chasing it. Like whatever it was, I was trying to figure out what the next step would be. Um, Luckily now my kids are 15 and 13. So it's not like I'm like wiping butts and, they're big, they're bigger.
Yeah.
They make them work for me. But was a lot. It's stressful.
Well, that's cool though, because it's like in entrepreneurship, you need a need. Like you need something people want, and this is such a need, and I'm such proof of this. So just a little backstory of the last couple weeks. I have been giving my kids elderberry every day. They've been having the gummies, which are delicious, and I'm trying to boost their immune system because I'm thinking about them and cold and flu season.
She ain't putting her own oxygen mask on first, though.
I know I'm not practicing what I preach. So guess who's sick in the house and who's not? My kids are thriving. And now I'm pumping elderberry now because I learned from you that you can shorten my cold and symptoms and all of that. So I would love for you to talk about just how it helps with immune support and some of the products you have and how households can kind of implement them, because I'm living proof right now that it works and it's delicious as I'm sipping on this syrup and tea. So I just want you to talk about how people can use this to benefit their households.
Sure. So actually, elderberry has been around for thousands of years. It's like one of the oldest plants. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said elder is the medicine chest. They used to use this plant, like the whole plant, for so many different things. But all of that kind of wisdom's been lost, with modern medicine. And so I feel like it's just kind of coming back around. So most people think of just the berries on the plant. Even though there's the flower and the leaf, there's all kinds of parts of the plant, but the berries are specifically used for viruses. So they've been studied to be antiviral, specifically for flu. So they can lower the viral load. So if you take it at onset, like our elixir is fresh pressed elderberry juice that we source from Missouri farms, and we add ginger, cinnamon, clove, and honey. So if you start pumping it like every hour, 2, 3 hours, kind of like short term, it will significantly help lower the duration and severity because it will lower that viral load. So if you can catch it at onset, it's like a Tamiflu. It works amazing.
I'm living and learning. Living and learning.
You are. Yeah, you are. And what about not when you're sick? Like, is this something you recommend to take all of the time to keep your immune system high, or just when you're sick?
So I recommend that no, but I mean, I don't think people should live on stuff all the time. I think you have to kind of use it as needed.
Okay.
So cold and flu season for sure. Like we pump it in our house, just a tablespoon a day. Everyone gets a tablespoon a day in the morning with their breakfast. Cold and flu season. If like my kids have been, or like my son can come home and be like, man, this kid next to me in class like coughing all over me all day. And I was like, oh, crap. So we'll just like 3 times a day
Okay.
for like 2, 3 days. Then I'll go back down to once a day. Just kind of give them, or if I know we're traveling, I'll kind of bump it up a little bit, so you figure out like how it works. Or if anyone starts coughing, I'm like, uh-oh, and I'll start kind of pumping it a little heavier. So we use it like that in our house.
And it's delicious. So this syrup I've been putting in my tea. Brooke's been putting it in her
The honey.
in her coffee. And my kids are constantly asking me, did I have my elderberry gummy today? Because I don't think I had it this morning. I'm like, yes, you did. So can you overdose on this stuff? Because it's delicious. And my kids keep asking for more.
I mean, yes, you probably can. I wouldn't. Like I said, it does have laxative and diuretic properties, though we've had customers be like, oh my God, I love it for that reason. Like some people are taking like, Metamucil still or whatever they're taking. And this was like, they don't need to take it anymore if they're taking their elderberry daily. It helps with that part too. So yeah, you could probably overdose if you're taking like tons of it, but no, I would say if you're just taking a couple of doses, you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there benefits? I'm thinking of you with Crohn's and just people listening with gut health benefits outside of immune system.
So we've actually had a lot of people that have come up, like literally have chased me down in parking lots that want to tell me their stories. And so again, when I started making this, I was just thinking immune support. Like that's the research that I did. That's what I was thinking. And then I had a lot of older women finding me, telling me their stories about RA, like for rheumatoid arthritis. So I guess it's very anti-inflammatory as well. Like elderberries are, plus the ginger in there. So they were like, oh my gosh, like I had my knee was hurting, my elbow was hurting. And then the only thing I changed was adding this elixir and it stopped hurting. And I was like, well, if you're consistent, yes, it will lower inflammatory load in the body as well. So that was pretty cool. And then Missouri University here in St. Louis, we have a big university. They have like an agroforest department and they just got a $5.4 million grant. They're doing a huge study for elderberry, and which is pretty amazing because it's just like, a $5 million grant for a berry is awesome. And it's a 2-part study. So the first part is helping the farmers here in Missouri. So I'm in Missouri, and we're leading the way in commercial elderberry farming, which is kind of like a big deal for our state. There's hundreds of acres of like farmers converting their fields to elderberry. And so the university is helping figure out what are the best varieties, like what has the most anthocyanins, what has the most antioxidants, kind of like what's best to grow. And then the second part of the study is all about brain health. So not a lot of things can cross the blood-brain barrier, and they've discovered that elderberry can. And so now they're trying to figure out how much of it would they need to like help break down some of the biofilm, like help prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, brain tumors, things like that.
Yeah, I saw studies about Alzheimer's and I saw studies about heart health too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's antioxidants. It's loaded with antioxidants and anthocyanins, you know. So with the anthocyanins, I think the idea is it like brings oxygenation like through the body better. So they talk about it like with sports recovery and things like that. So it's the purple color.
yeah.
Those are the
Okay.
anthocyanins in the berry.
That's got to feel so good that that's what your product does. Well, and then it's getting backed by this money and this funding for education on something that's so good for you. I'm curious as a business owner, like what sets your business apart when you think about you versus other brands, like why people should go with all things elderberry?
So I think one of the main reasons, well, there's a couple actually. Well, like the mission for me is bringing the entire plant back into people's lives. Like you can go get a supplement anywhere, and a lot of it is European berries or dried berries are coming out of Europe. So with us, like I'm sourcing from Missouri farmers, which I think is really exciting. It's really helping our farming community, and there's so much research going into the different parts of the plant. We're also juicing the berry fresh in season. So you're not getting a dried berry that's been sitting on a container somewhere. You know, this is a fresh like juice coming right from the farm and right into the bottle. So it also has the first heat process done to it, which I think is a big deal because when we're talking about like anthocyanins and antioxidants, they're kind of like not that stable. So any kind of fresh fruit you like or vegetables, you know, when you start cooking them and adding heat, it starts lowering the the available nutrients in them. So we just do a quick flash heating on ours just to kill off like whatever needs to be killed off before we bottle it. So I think that's awesome. And then we try to make everything as clean as possible. You know, we're not adding corn syrup or any kind of emulsifiers or thickeners. Like our elixir has ginger, cinnamon, clove, local honey, and some lemon juice, like just for the pH. So it doesn't really get any cleaner than that unless you're making it on your stove by yourself, you
Yeah.
know? So even like our jelly and all our other products, they're all just super clean.
I love it. And I just want to hit home too, something that I've been talking a lot is hormone health. And starting
Yeah.
my day with a big cup of coffee or like midday have another cup of coffee and it's just like jacking up my cortisol and thinking about switching to green tea that has some caffeine in it, but also all of these health benefits with that instead is so nice. And I love something that's a little sweet. So having the syrup, the elderberry honey or syrup, having those is just, this has been a game changer for me. And I'm hoping, and I'm going to do some more testing with my hormones, but I'm sure it's got to be helping my cortisol levels too.
Yeah, they say like having coffee first thing in the morning before you eat or, you know, move or do anything is so bad for you.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if you like the green tea that you have right now is in a dark mug, but if you ever have it in a glass mug, it's a really pretty color.
Yeah.
Like I like color and like it makes me happy. So I like looking at pretty colors.
Uh-huh.
Green tea is like a really pretty color too.
Well, and your products are so pretty with the purple and it's gorgeous. Yeah. So, and if you drink this in a clear mug, yeah, it's like this gorgeous deep purple too. I'm like, this looks just like the branding. It's so pretty.
I can't wait for everyone to get their hands on this. Can you share where people can find it, where they can best support you? Let's plug everything.
Yeah, thanks. So allthingselderberry.com, that would be the best place. If you're in Missouri, we're in a lot of stores. Our first national chain is Fresh Time Market. So I think there's about 75 of those. So that's our first chain that we've been able to get into. The grocery game that could be a whole separate podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, allthingselderberry.com would be the best place to find us.
Okay. I love that. And Fresh Time, that's big in Minnesota. We have a lot of Fresh Times. A lot of our listeners are from Minnesota. I love
there you
Fresh
go.
Time. So that's very exciting. Congratulations.
I actually saw it on the shelf in Plymouth,
yeah.
which is where my daughter goes to dance. And so I was like, oh, there it is.
I
took
know
a little
this.
picture. Yeah.
Well, we will plug all of that in the show notes so everyone can get some elderberry, stock your cupboards. It is flu and cold season, and we all need some elderberry.
That's right.
And Amelia, for your 3 gold stars, top 3 takeaways you would have for our audience, what would they be?
Okay, so I think that, you know, since we started talking about healing, I think one of my biggest takeaways that I've learned along the way is I think if you want to completely heal and like, you know, really find success in it, I know we talked about a couple different things, but I think one of the main things is you have to become a different person. I think it's like the person that was diagnosed with that illness needs to almost like die off. And you truly have to step into a completely different version of yourself that doesn't exist with that illness. And I kind of have discovered that that is a major piece of it.
Oh, okay. Question off of that. How is that done?
You just start changing every aspect of your life, especially your beliefs. Like you start changing what you eat, whether you exercise or not, what you read, what you're doing, how you talk to people, how you talk to you just literally start even how you dress, whatever you just become a different person. And eventually that person is not the same person that was sick.
Have you seen that your flare-ups have decreased over the last?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a completely different person. Yeah, I've been able to get myself off of, those harsh medications. And I do take something called Stellaro, but I take it like 4 shots a year. And that's it. And I have a great doctor who actually thinks I can probably even start backing away. I have to get over some fears and like having children and having a business and being stressed and being scared to, completely rely on nothing. And that's something that I know I'm going to get there. But in the time that I've been working, it's just incredible, like how far I've come. Like I haven't been hospitalized since the time I was with my son when I was 30.
Wow. That's huge. And little by little, as you've been sharing your story, this hasn't happened overnight. So for anyone listening who's like, oh my gosh, I have to change everything. It's like, no, start with one thing Emilia mentioned and have that one thing be elderberry. That's such an easy, low-hanging fruit, pun intended. Grab it.
I feel like you keep saying the things that I was going to say next.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2, it takes time.
Yeah.
That's literally number 2. It's like everybody, even when I was doing some coaching, like I would get frustrated and I decided, like, this is not for me. I cannot work with people like this. I'm sure I probably could now, but back then I was just frustrated. People want results overnight. Like I've been doing this diet for like 6 months. Like 6 months is just not enough time to heal your body. It's just not like, there's like so many other things we could talk about, like the whole quantum, science stuff, but, and the mirroring stuff, it just takes time. Like, yes, you want to see something and yes, you're working towards something. It takes a lot more time than I think we think it should, but I think if you stay consistent and you know what you're doing, not that you know what you're doing, but you're consistent and true to what you're doing. And you're like, I'm going to keep healing. I'm going to keep healing. Like I will heal. Like I'm healing. It does. You just have to really, stick with it. So that's number 2. It takes time. So if you don't see results in 3 to 6 months, don't jump ship, like that's when you really have to kind of get over the hump. Okay. And then number 3, I think you need to build a community. It's really hard to go through a lot of stuff yourself, even whether you're a mom, whether you have an illness, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're building whatever it is, like you guys have each other, it's just it's so much better to have a community of people that can like keep you accountable, like, make it fun, all this stuff.
I feel like everything you're saying can apply to so many things, right? Where it's having patience for weight loss, having patience for getting pregnant, having patience for your business to take off, having patience for finding the person you want to marry or whatever it might be, right? It's consistently having a mindset of you're working towards something, yes, but it's the journey, right? And you hear it all the time, but you're learning lessons along the way. And I'm someone of faith, and I believe that in the midst of it, until you grasp the lesson, like you're going to keep getting hit in the head or having these obstacles until you're like, I do have to become a different person or think of things a new way or find gratitude in the midst of this hardship or fill in the blank. And knowing that takes time and having the community along the way is like the secret sauce, I feel like. So I feel like that applies to so many people. Those are great tips.
Yeah. And anything that we're doing in your fitness journey, same thing.
For sure.
I love those points. I'm just so grateful for you. Thank you for sharing that. And, I love seeing the heart behind products. I don't like taking a million things because of my journey and exactly what you said earlier of you read something and you cling to it and you're like, this is going to be the end all be all, the fix. And so to have you, someone who has a product that you love and you believe in, but you're also saying there's so many other things out there that aren't just products that you need to invest in, like your mindset and your nutrition. So you're speaking to my soul and I know all of the listeners too. So before we get to the next segment, I just want to express my gratitude.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I see so many similarities between you two of just like your journeys and what you've gone through and the patience it takes and the doctor visits and all of those things. And so it's kind of wild.
The new identity, I think, is one of being patient. And the Lord's like, until you learn to be patient, I'm going to keep knocking you on the head. I'm like, okay, fine.
All right.
It's so true.
The next segment is Unleashing Abby. So surprise questions for you, Emilia. Oh, I hate how I sound. I'm going to pound so much elderberry today.
Okay, ask your question. What are you curious about?
Oh, I got a good one. I want to get into the woo-woo. You mentioned the quantum field. I want to hear some of like the practices you have today or mindset beliefs or something that's a little out there that you know has really helped you heal or helps you kind of thrive today.
Oh, I love that.
So I really got into like Joe Dispenza's work. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. I even went to like one of his seminars.
Ooh.
I know. I was like, it's like when people are like, "Ooh, who's your celebrity?" Like I'm like, "Oh, Joe Dispenza," like Brad Pitt. I'm like, "Oh, Joe Dispenza." Everyone's like, "You're lame." I'm like, "No, you don't get it." I think the meditation piece and the kind of being able to calm, the just the calming the chatter. I think that's been huge for me. We all kind of grow up with like different people in our lives and talking and or even if you've gone through stuff, there's like negative talk or I think I listen to a lot of that stuff kind of on repeat, just reminding myself like, hey, let go of all that stuff. You have to clear your mind, like change how you're thinking, So I do a lot of that because I really believe that changes the actual biology in the body.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned the nervous system earlier, and it's like if that's constantly in fight or flight. We've talked about this all the time, but I feel like so many people don't realize like that is you. You're walking around like in a hurry, and especially thinking about my life. Like this week, I've been a single mom. My husband's been traveling for work, and it's like I am literally going from here to there and here to there, and I'm having to remember so many things on top of running a business and a household, and it's like. It almost feels impossible sometimes to calm the nervous system. And so on top of that, like in the midday of you being an entrepreneur and parent, like where are you finding that time to meditate or to calm the nervous system to help the biology of your body?
I do my best to try to get to the gym. We have a sauna in there.
Oh,
So I'll try
nice.
to get in the sauna. My dogs are like eventually they'll get, antsy and I'll go outside with them. So they'll run around and I'll just kind of sit there and be like, or I'm in my car a lot. You guys don't have teenagers yet, but I'm in my car a lot. So I put on like meditations in the car and I'll just sit there and I'll, listen to the meditations. I also love Kundalini, like breath work.
Okay.
So I just find those little moments because honestly, I can't wake up and go meditate. Like I keep saying I'm going to, but I got to get the kids out the door. I got dogs. I got like, there's already a million things going on. It's like 10 o'clock by the time I'm like cleaning the kitchen, doing the dish. You know what I mean?
That's brilliant though. It's like pairing something with something you're already doing. So it's like you're already going to be in the car. You're already going to be outside, sitting in the sauna. Fantastic for a million reasons. Love those tips. Thank you.
Yeah, I just try to and those are like the little times that I know I can do it. And that's when I do it. I wish I can say I have a beautiful area in my house where I sit.
No, but that's so relatable.
That's better. Yeah, that's relatable.
You get it in where you can, and you're not so, it has to be like this.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't happen. And then you just shame and you get hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know, my question is related to the biggest identity shift that has helped you. So something you used to do that the new you doesn't do.
Great question.
Other than meditation.
Wow, that's something I used to that the new you doesn't do. I think it's stress is one of them.
Okay.
Is probably a big one. Everything would stress me out. Like everything used to stress me out. I would get like really disappointed or be really hard on myself or like especially in business or parenting, whatever, like anything, I would get really frustrated, I think, because you just want everything to go well. So I think I've really, really learned. And I tell myself and the kids all the time, like, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Just not a big deal. Like you spilled something, it broke. It's not a big deal. Like this, it's not a big deal. Like it's not going to be a big deal in 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's that reaction. I think that I really, really had to work on for a couple of years because I was very reactive. And I think that was huge for me, like stop being reactive. And now I'm almost like, whatever, like it's all good. I just don't even care. Not that I don't care, but I'm like, I don't care about that kind of stuff. Like, we'll fix it, we'll figure it out. Like,
You're not going
and
to
I
let it
think
affect you.
I'm not gonna let it affect me. Or like I'm trying to teach my kids that too. I've seen like people where like they drop even like something and break, like, oh my God, it's broken. Like I dropped, and you're like, it's fine. It's like a bowl. Relax.
Yeah.
People are like, and then you start realizing, you start looking around, you're like, oh my God, everyone's like crazy.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Everyone needs
I
some
love
meditation in their life.
Calm down. Yeah.
It's a great answer. I
It
love
is
that.
a total result of meditation, though. It's like it slows down the reactivity. I need to do it more. Yeah. Okay, last question. If you could go back, Emilia, to younger Emilia and tell her something, what age would she be and what would you tell her?
She would be exactly when I was diagnosed. And I would tell her, don't listen to the guy in the white coat. I really do think that that was huge based on like, the Joe Dispenza stuff and even like Bruce Lipton. Like I've done a lot of reading in that mindset and your biology of beliefs. And I think that when someone says to you when you're a kid, like you have a disease that will never go away and you have it for life and you're stuck, you know what I mean? Like you just believe that person because they're like the best doctor in New York or whatever
Yeah.
and then immediately that goes into your brain, into your body, and it is like solidified.
Mm.
I just think that it's like you can believe anything you want. Like almost anything is believable. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think people do all kinds of amazing things because they believe they can or they believe they can't. And I wish I can go back to that day and say, don't listen to him. Like we can figure this out. You know, because I think
Mm.
that would have really changed the trajectory of my life, at least for that first decade where I was just like a disaster.
Yeah.
I
I
feel
love
like
that.
your 15-year-old self would be so proud of you. Like it makes me teary-eyed to think of how far you've come, right? And it's like broken. I'm thinking of it's like broken into 15 years of like these segments and where you're at and how relaxed you are and loving you are with your kids and this building this beautiful business and helping so many people and probably a lot of people that were you that had suppressed immune systems and you have this solution. So it's just so beautiful how this has all come together. And I love that you're an example for our listeners of if there's a need and you feel called to something or you've lived through something, it doesn't have to be this disaster and victimhood story. It can really be, something that can really help people. And I love that you're elevating your voice and out at all these farmers markets and doing the Lord's work. So thank you for just listening to that calling and day after day doing a lot of work to get these products out for people.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you letting me share.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Okay, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Are you a book reader?
Yes, a
Okay.
million.
I had a feeling that you were, and our listeners are readers. Andrew and I love to read. She actually just gifted me The Body Keeps Score, which we have been dying to read. So super pumped about that. But it just reminds me, as you're speaking of belief and Joe Dispenza, I'm curious if there's a mindset book that you love that you would recommend to anyone going through a healing journey.
Yes. Probably one of my favorites is The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. I probably listen to that book like a couple times a year.
Okay.
Oh,
I have it on Audible, and so I listen to it a lot. It's almost like my comfort. I think at one point I was falling asleep to it.
Wow.
Um, yeah, that's my favorite.
okay.
And that was my quote, was actually from that book.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, teed it up perfect. Emilia, would you please send us off with your piece of gold?
Okay, so "You are not your mind" is the quote from that book. And I think that if you read that book, it would make more sense. And this was like mind blowing to me. Like, I don't think I even it took me a couple times to read it to be like, what the hell is he talking about? So like the chatter that we have in our mind all the time, like he describes it, it's like, it's not you. Like it is like another being that's like almost taken over, like a little alien, you know? And if you can learn to just observe it and be like, what are you talking, like, just kind of like observe it and not let it constantly be there, you start to almost feel that separation. It's like, oh no, I'm not that.
Yeah.
And that's been really big for me. Like being able to kind of shut that off and be like, no, we're not doing that. We're just going to be here and enjoying this and just sitting there. And it creates a completely new level of stillness where you're like, wow, that feels amazing in my body to not hear that annoying voice. And because he even says it's like, if you see a crazy person walking around talking, you're like, that's a crazy person. Like, but we're all doing it in our heads.
Oh, I love that.
You are not your mind.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.
I
Oh,
have to read this book.
Emilia, I loved that so much. This was literally such a gift.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I feel like we were connected and I was teeing you up and it was just, it flowed so beautifully. Yeah. Like it was so easy.